Stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are you doing the roll call?
I will do the roll call. For those of you who haven't noticed, Suzanne is away this week. So I will be taking notes the best I can. I will do the roll call. Mr. Arcuri.
Here.
Mr. Bova.
Here.
Mr. Brodsky.
Here.
Mr. Coyne.
Present.
Mr. D'Elia.
Here.
Mr. Markford. Mr. Mitchford.
Here.
Mr. Mutolo.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Cesny.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Late but here.
Late but here.
On time?
You were right on time.
Right on time?
Mr. Zyrak.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. You have the April 15th draft minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
A second? Any comments, corrections, deletions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The next item is a resolution for professional services, which I'll turn over to Dick, and the resolution is in your packet or in your booklet, or both.
Yes, thank you, Alice. At last Capital Committee meeting, which was on May 10th, past Friday, we discussed a couple of award resolutions. One for professional services related to the preparation of a master implementation plan for capacity-related improvements to the entire water system, should we ever be fortunate enough to land a high-tech manufacturer or other firm of that nature. We also talked about the Kendall Street renovations project, which we have bid, and the committee recommended both resolutions come to the full board. The committee also asked that we provide a brief presentation on these capacity improvements, what they may involve. They really touch all areas of our system, and as I said, they wouldn't be accomplished unless we had a major demand in sight. So I've got a few slides which I'll run through. As I said, the committee met. We discussed the firm that we were looking at is CH2M Hill. They're an international engineering firm. They also do a lot of work with the semiconductor and high-tech industries. They haven't done any direct construction work with us. The improvements that I'm going to describe tonight have been developed either by other engineering companies or the Water Authority staff themselves using some of the tools that we have. They're going to occur really in four major areas: raw water mains, water treatment plant capacity improvements, storage in the system, and water transmission main work. This is our finished water mains. Almost all this work occurs on the northern part of the system. The raw water mains, that is not only for capacity, but for reliability. Our mains, and you'll see a picture of them in a little while, or at least the route, are quite old, 1905, 1958 vintage. It's been in the capital plan for over 10 years to do something with those mains. It's been somewhat advanced due to the litigation because Hinkley water levels do affect how much water we can get through the smaller mains we have now. So it saw a little more focus in the last few years, and that's a little further along than these other projects. Second one would be the water treatment plant. Currently 32 MGD, expansion to 50 MGD. The raw water mains, that can be done piecemeal. The plant, we would look at the entire project. We may not turn all the pieces on, but it would make sense to do the entire project at one time. And you've got the approximate dollar figures right there. The raw water main project development's been done by O'Brien and Gear and Barton LaJudas, both under some of our study work and as part of the support for the litigation. The water treatment plant, we were fortunate to have GHD, formerly Stearns and Wheeler, on board for that. They competitively won about 6 months ago an evaluation of the treatment plant. It's a 20-year checkup, which we finished, and we have a few other projects identified, certainly. But they were able to spend a few more days and give us a pretty good schematic outline of what we would need to do, as they just did with the plant. It's essentially the big sister to Hinkley, the Tisco Lake plant out at Aqua. They just upgraded that in a similar fashion. That would be around $40 million. And of course, if we had significant demand of the system, we need more tanks to store finished water to protect our existing users. We have a couple of sites. All of our project sites that we've done recently can accommodate additional construction. And lastly, water transmission mains, occurring mostly in Marcy and Trenton. We would parallel our existing mains in order to make sure we deliver that full needed capacity in existing right-of-ways, and this should be fairly inexpensive construction, but still $12 million. These projects are shown here. Upper right is Hinkley Reservoir, the blue, and then the treatment plant's about 3 miles downstream. Other projects, that's where project 1 occurs. It's a raw water main in the treatment plant. Downstream, we have project 2 would be Toby Road. That's where the Marcy Town Park is. We have 2 tanks there. And then 3 is the Marcy Kavanaugh Road tank site. The little green square in the middle is the nanotech site. But if we were to go westerly or easterly, we would come off the northern side of the system. The east-west gray line there is Route 49. You have the thruway. North-south gray line is Route 12. Up at Hinkley, this is the what we term the power pool. The dam is on the right part of the screen. The 365 overlook is just on the other side. That's where our intakes are. We route our lines down. That's the green line that you should hopefully can see. 3 miles almost to the treatment plant down in the village of Prospect, near the village. At Hinkley, this is the upper end. Again, you've got Route 365 and the bridge just across on South Shore Road. The NYPA generation occurs on the north side of the dam, the spillway, the concrete there. Our intake tower is on the south side. That's where we have the 60-foot high tower. Our mains run along the south side, along Katy Road, and out through right away. 14,000 feet later, the next time the water sees daylight, are those 2 basins, which are on the other side of the treatment plant. Those are our contact basins. At best, we have about 85 or 90 feet of elevation difference between those 2 points. At worst, we can get down to 40 or 45 feet, and that's why we look at larger size or supplemental water mains. Going back up, the bright red line, a little heavier line, is the route, and that's the study work we've done so far for the 3rd raw water line. And it would be designed to completely deliver all of the flow that we would anticipate under low water elevation. The 36-inch that's already there is 60 years old. The 24-inch is 107 years old, actually, this coming September. So we've been looking at a 3rd line up there for reliability purposes anyways, but this will vastly allow us to improve both the efficiency of our ability to draw water up to the 48.5, 50 MGD, and also will allow us to improve our generation capacity. At some point, we would need to put a larger turbine into the plant because that's where we generate electricity off the excess head. So that's about 15,000 feet of main. We've kind of picked the middle as the first phase. There's around 9,000 feet that would be probably the easiest construction. It is a construction challenge. We're either in rock or we're in or near water, so that is an expensive effort. What we want to do next is take a better, closer look at the phasing of that, and we do have money set aside in the capital plan to do that, but we've actually gone down that road quite a ways as part of the litigation support. And some of the monies that we had set aside for that we're proposing to put toward the master plan. The treatment plant, let me back up a little bit, that's the lower photo is the existing treatment plant, the contact basins. The main white rectangular structure is the administration building, filter galleries where we have our clarifiers and our filters. Lower levels all open to atmosphere, and you have large concrete basins. The two tanks off to the right are our contact basins. That's where the finished water goes to receive essentially the final treatment process, which is just a contact time with disinfecting and buffering chemicals for pH adjustment. And this is what GHD proposed, basically parallel to the basins, additional concrete contact basins, and also additions to on the plant to the south, both the administration building, the clarifiers, and filters. What's not shown here, we haven't really defined yet, is additional sludge handling and probably another clear well, but those would likely be required. We have enough room up there to do this, and we are fortunate to have that. And the old West Canada, the gorge off to the right, you can see. Far off to the right is the pool that takes the water down to the Brookfield power plant, the canal. So that's about $40 million. The pipelines and the treatment for the storage, again, at number 2 and 3, that's Toby Road and Kavanaugh Road. You can see the red line paralleling the existing 2 lines. We have 24-inch and 36-inch lines coming down now. Our hydraulic analysis, and we used the one effort that CH2M Hill did for us about 5 years ago was a system-wide hydraulic model as part of the EPA requirements, so we could model our water quality. If you recall, we had a 5-year plan, we compressed it to 14 months because their regulations came out. CH2M Hill prepared that, and we've been using it ever since. The analysis for the additional storage and the new pipelines we did ourselves in-house. But taking a look at those 2 tank sites, and together these are about $20 million. Toby Road, you've got the Marcy Park, the photo on the left. Down toward the right, the large blue circle is a new tank up to 12 million gallons. And again, we own all the land up there. So we're fortunate we can do that. All control structures are designed to handle 50 million gallons. So it would go fit nicely on that site. Down at Kavanaugh Road, about 2 or 3 miles south, there we'd end up using the existing 15 million gallon reservoir, which is now on standby. It is fairly small. We have 2 others as the most likely location where we would place another tank. And as I mentioned, we've got Toby Road, the tank would be just a 3rd tank in the line there. This shot of the control structure. Actually, this one here where it says tank inlet, beyond that pipe that you see going to the wall is valved off. That's what would connect the new tank to the system, and we always tried to keep in mind someday, wasn't sure I'd be doing it, but someday additional tanks and features going on these sites. And Toby Road's been online for 3 years now. The new tank would go off to the left. Here's a shot from the cemetery down the way, but I guess there's a few complaints from the neighbors so far. Marcy Reservoir, Kavanaugh Road, if you drive north on Kavanaugh, you see it off to the right. Again, control building and a smaller tank right now there. A new tank would go off to the right, and again, we've designed these facilities to handle 50 MGD. Once we split up, we go over to Deerfield, that's designed for 26 MGD. We looked at maximum build out of the system about 10 years ago for our existing areas, but where we know that we may have to move a lot of water in the future, we've sized everything, and here you have control valves. The Marcy, the Toby tanks basically balance plant production and system demand up there. The plant automatically start putting out more water if those tanks drop. Marcy and Deerfield, we call them little smarter tanks, they actually regulate pressures to match our existing intermediate and low zones, and there's a lot of control work that goes on inside these, but they're sized for the full build out. The mains, again, Toby Road to the northeast, mostly farm fields, about 18,000 feet, and we just kept adding pipe along our existing main until the Toby Road tanks worked at acceptable levels. And down below, you see some red lines on Edict Road and going into the Nano site. We'd have to do some upgrades there, about 12,000 or 9,000 feet, so 27,000 altogether. Some 42-inch and some 24-inch. All of that we're calls it around $12 million. So you add it all up, $110 million. Certainly, we're not going to proceed with it unless we see the sales, water sales, the revenue supporting the bonds to do it, with the exception of the third raw water line. We'd like to start doing manageable pieces of that because of the reliability, the issue, like the raw, and so you'll see a little more on that in the future. And that was it. Any questions on that?
We wanted to bring the board, or give the board an overview of should CHIP come, what it is we're gonna have to be doing. And the purpose of the resolution number 1 is to give us that roadmap to be able to do that, Dick, is that?
Exactly.
So
The
this
plan, when we have to do it, what would it cost? And it's a good plan to have anyways, because, you know, it may not be a major high-tech facility, we may get someone else that'll give us intermediate steps along the way at reasonable junctions out. Because the plant itself, if they built a high-tech plant, they're not gonna get the full build-out for a number of years. We've gotta support it as it goes along. So we'll get, you know, what we need to do to deliver 5, 8, 10 million gallons. Again, I wanna repeat, for the current foreseeable future, we have enough high-quality water and capacity to take care of all of our existing needs. This is major.
One thing we mentioned at the capital committee as well is that, and as Dick said, most of this we wouldn't be doing unless we have a large user that comes to the system. We've done some financial analysis, and it shows that if there's a microchip plant up there, that the revenue from that use would pay those bonds to do all that work, right up to that $110 million price tag, and it would not impose any cost on the rest of the users for any of this work that has to be done. The only exception would be if we don't get the chip plant, we still would want to do the third raw water line anyway. That becomes a cost to the system and the customers, and that would be really for reliability concerns more than anything else. But the rest of that stuff, don't be afraid when you hear numbers like 100 or $110 million, because all that work, the debt service on those bonds would be met by the revenue coming in, and we wouldn't pull the trigger on that stuff unless there was an ironclad agreement. We knew there was going to be a build out at that site and that the water use was going to be there to support it.
But the other issue with that is, if we do have the chip plant, the likelihood that we'll get an accommodation so that we can build out on the bonding side is pretty good.
Yeah.
But if we don't get the chip plant and we are looking at a multi-million-dollar expenditure, we need to look at our bonding cap. We have a very unreasonable bonding cap. We're not capped as to the amount that we can afford to bond. We're capped at the total amount that was bonded over time, notwithstanding how much has been paid off. Right now, we could literally have paid off our entire bonding and still be capped. Because,
85% now?
yeah. So I mean, it was a very short-sighted approach.
So what makes you think that we would be in a good position?
Well,
Does it
because
have to be
it's
registered?
1,000 jobs and $1 billion in investment, and the state of New York, I'm sure, would not say, well, you know, we have to not do that, because we don't want $1 billion worth of business in the Mohawk Valley or 1,000 jobs that pay well. So, I mean, I would feel relatively confident if.
I would
if
too,
we
but I
get
mean,
it.
it just,
On the other hand,
it
it's-
seems like it's gonna be everything's gonna have to fall in place with timing
Oh,
and all.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that's the reason why we're doing this preliminary study, because if a company came in and signed on the dotted line, they're on a very tight timetable to get up and operating. We would need to make sure that all this work is being coordinated in a way that we stay ahead of them. And so, you know, Dick wisely has reached out to these folks, particularly companies that have expertise in the microchip field. They know the company's needs, they know how fast they're going to be putting things together, what their water use escalation would be. And our goal would be, obviously, to, you know, be ahead of them and be able to provide that water all the way along.
I want to, this has something to do with that, but I just want to say something about the approach that this water authority has taken all these years. I've been on, I don't know, about 10 years. I don't even remember how long I've been on.
Longer than that, I think.
Maybe longer than that.
Definitely longer than that, Bruce.
One of the things that's been very impressive is that this staff is constantly looking 5 to 10 years in the future, whether or not we have a commitment, but knowing that we're going to need to do something. This type of professional services contract is an example of that. We don't know if it's going to happen, but for the small amount of money it costs to be prepared and literally be able to say, Oh, you're going to sign January 1st? Not a problem. We have a plan, 18 months, this will be done, 24 months, this will be done. I mean, to wait until it happens is how government normally does it. But this board has been very well prepared for all our improvements through this entire time. I want to thank you for that. You know, spent a lot of money, but I thank you anyway. You've done a good job.
And the second page of the memo on this gives you the exact budget information and where this money is coming from. Anybody have any questions for Dick or Pat on this?
This was coming out of Dick's salary.
It's kind of a chairman slush fund. Is someone inclined to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Yes, Vince. A second?
I'll second.
Like 3 seconds, I think there. Any further comments, issues, concerns, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The next item on our agenda is another construction contract award. Dick, I'll turn that over to you.
Under agenda item 5, you have the briefing memo and an award resolution for a construction contract, a little different from the professional services. Several months ago, you may recall, we did retain Nelson Associates from Clinton to do some final design and bidding documents of some much-needed improvements out at our Kemble Street maintenance facility, 55-year-old facility. We're looking at upgraded restrooms, locker rooms, break rooms, some code-related upgrades, new HVAC work, et cetera. Just bringing some of the employee workspaces, there's 40 staff out there, up to acceptable current standards. A lot of it is the original mid-50s components out there that needed some work. We have budgeted it in the capital plan this year, and we did go out for bid. We opened bids on May 8th. We had just 2 bidders. It is a kind of fairly small renovation project. One was G.A. Knoll, and the second at $259,085. And BB Construction Services at $319,900. The engineer's estimate, Nelson, was around 263. So we saw Knoll coming in at about the right number. That's about 10 or 12% over our budget that's in the capital plan for a couple of reasons. When we got into final design, it became apparent that it would make more sense to provide a separate rooftop high-efficiency HVAC unit for this workspace in particular. It gets some air conditioning. We are looking at upgrades throughout the building. Again, we have old HVAC systems, not much ventilation or air from heat. We're doing an ICERTA study on the balance of the building now, the open garage spaces. But rather than route those lines over, we decided it made more sense to add a rooftop unit here and advance some of that work. We also had a small parts room that's available now. We can make that kind of a cleaner room, not an IT room, but we can leave our TV, our monitoring system, and some other electronic equipment in that room, so we did that as well. And lastly was the restrooms. We were going to try to use the existing restrooms, move them around, but it just would not work well. So we're going to rent for 3 months temporary restrooms and move the old lockers into a container outside between the buildings. So that added around $25,000 to the cost. We do show in here where we proposed that those funds would come from. The last year we did 3 roof projects: the water treatment plant, Kemble Street Small Parts Building, a new building, and Roof Road Pump Station. All of that work came in significantly under budget, over $100,000 under budget, and we proposed, and those projects are all closed out, that we used $25,000 that was returned to the capital reserve fund to take care of this. We also had a $10,000 allowance in there because there's some places we just couldn't get. So if we need to, do a little bit of extra work, we can. There's spaces we just couldn't get behind some walls and things, so we wanted to have a little bit of an allowance. So that's included in the 259. As of last capital meeting, we hadn't checked references. Both Nelson Associates and myself have called people. We've gotten 4 acceptable references, 3 specific to projects such as this, and 1 on a larger type project. So we would recommend that the board hire G.A. Newell for this work.
Any questions or concerns for Dick? Dick, did we approve this before and it's back because it's of this additional money?
No, what we approved before was an initial study last year and then hiring Nelson to do the design.
I knew we looked at something.
Yeah, it takes a few years for these to come on through.
Any questions for Dick on this? Is someone inclined to move the motion as in our packet? Yes. Is there a second? Any further comments or concerns? All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Dick. The next item on our agenda is approval of the quarterly investment statement, which you can find in your miscellaneous section of the booklet. Jim?
Yes, in your binder is the last quarter of the fiscal year. Under the public authority law, we're required to provide you this on a quarterly basis, so this is the last quarter. Included in here is the income earned for the year and any expenses related to these investments.
Yes, Bruce?
What is this additional administrative fee from the EFC?
That is, it's high because they take 0.11% of the outstanding bonds. That's how they get their fee.
On bonds that pay 0 interest?
They get it one way or another. Yes, and this administrative fee is one way how they pay for their cost.
Did we anticipate that?
Yes.
Anything else, Bruce?
Yeah, we got more than 0 on interest.
And you can see, the 2001B
How much better than our
bonds,
savings accounts?
the amount is not as significant because there's not much left on bonds.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Jim regarding this? Is there a motion to approve the quarterly investment statement for the fourth quarter?
I'll move it.
A second? Benny? Any further discussion or comments on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Committee reports, Dick's already done capital projects, and there is a written report in your packet. Jim, do you have anything from the finance end?
That's first month of the fiscal year, as anticipated. Our cash flow is a little down. We pay a lot out in the first couple months of the fiscal year and catch up. Consumption is a little down. That wasn't anticipated. Hopefully we'll recover as months go along. We're down about 2.7 million cubic feet compared to this time last year, so we'll keep an eye on that. Revenue is pretty much on line with budget. We're a little down on that as well, but that's the result of the consumption being down.
What do you attribute the deficit?
Well, there's a list on, there's some major users that are down on page 2, but it's spread, the majority of it's spread across the board. And looking at it first glance, it was a drier summer or drier spring last year. This year it was a little wetter, even though it seems to be drying out now. But we're seeing it spread all along.
Any other questions for Jim? Thanks, Jim. Moving on to the executive director's report.
Thank you very much. We're not in executive session, so I won't get into too much detail on this topic, but I thought you should know that our negotiation process with our Teamster bargaining unit has hit a stall. A couple issues creeped in that we didn't really expect, and we thought it might take quite a while to resolve. So rather than pay our attorney to come down here for 3 or 4 more sessions, we moved to declare an impasse. So that's been filed with the State Public Employee Relations Board, PERB, and we are waiting right now for a mediator to be assigned, and then we'll move along through fact-finding and mediation and come back to you when there's something else to report on that. However, not wanting to hold everybody necessarily at bay while the Teamsters are on a sideline, we do have dates set up to meet with our Management Employee Association within the next 2 weeks, and see if, in fact, we have some common ground and we can maybe bring that to a reasonable conclusion and at least get one of the bargaining units in place. And that may help set a tone for the Teamsters to recognize as far as what's realistic and what's not. So, again, I'll keep you all posted as we move along with that, but I just wanted to let you know that we may not have a new Teamster contract for a little while. Hopefully it won't be too much longer and protracted. Excuse me. Our automated meter reading project is still moving ahead. The company, Neptune Meters, and working with local radio installer, JPJ Radio, right here in our area, are moving ahead to put the rest of the collectors up, and we expect that that work will all be completed around September 1st. They're thinking 3 to 4 months through the summer months. In the meantime, our guys are moving ahead. We've ordered a couple thousand more of the radio modems and meters as well, so we're proceeding with the conversion process at the local level, house to house or location to location. But the collectors should all be up and running. We're getting great reports so far. We're getting much better distance out of each one that we thought we would. Some problems that we thought we might crop up as far as basement installations and things like that. We're not seeing that at all. We have one in a sub-basement at the Harts Hill Inn that we're picking up just fine from the collector over at the tank. We're getting 6 miles line of sight distance from some of these. The propagation study was really built on assuming 1 to 2 miles distance. So I think when the thing is really up and running, we're going to get some performance out of it that probably exceeds what we expected to get. So that'll mean more redundancy and less anticipation of failure and losing readings and things like that. So we're moving ahead. This morning I was out in Charlotte for an 8 o'clock meeting. We've been meeting fairly regularly now with the folks at the western side of the county to talk about a regional water approach out there. And this morning's meeting was a little bit different because we were joined by County Executive Anthony Pacenti, who came to brief us on the proposed settlement that you may have heard about between the state, the nation, the Indian Nation, Oneida Nation, and the 2 counties, Madison and Oneida. So we spent most of the morning talking about that. A little bit in the end, talking again about the water project and where we go from here. Nothing really big to report other than the fact that we still haven't heard anything on this consolidation study and funding that we've requested. And that was submitted again in mid-March, and here we are approaching the end of May, and so far we haven't heard a thing on it. But we're still hopeful and crossing our fingers that this time around the application will be viewed a little more favorably than it was last time, especially since we did meet with the folks from the program and had a pretty good discussion about why it was turned down last time and what we could do to improve it this time around. And we had walked out of that meeting with a pretty good idea that we were going to meet their criteria. So we'll wait and see, and hopefully that money will come for that consolidation study. And
what's the cost of the study?
we've requested up to $200,000, and that was a small local match from each of us, which this board agreed to, and the rest coming from the state. So that would be plenty to do some fresh engineering studies if we needed. But right now, I think the original concept of the Verona pipeline is still viewed very favorably by the parties that were all involved. And I think with this agreement, if it's passed at the local level and the state level, that may in fact change the nature of the way that this project will be viewed by the state and avoid some of the problems we ran into 8 or 9 years ago, and I think most of you know what I'm talking about on that one. We got a letter back recently from the DEC on the 4-town permit seeking more information. I thought maybe, Dick, if you want to just give a quick 20-second explanation of
It'll
that.
take less than that. I got a phone call from the DEC saying a letter is on the way.
Oh, okay.
Indicating our application is incomplete. The 12 attachments wasn't enough, I guess. So we will, we anticipate that. Very seldom. I mean, there's always something else that they may be looking for clarification. We did get the first letter, said they needed 5 more copies. So it certainly is gone to quite a few of their staff. So it should be in tomorrow or the next day, and we'll consult our attorneys and get rid of that.
Well, we're going to do what we can to keep the process moving from our end.
Oh, they've only had it for 9 years. I mean,
Yeah, that's all.
We won't want to speed up that process.
In fairness to DEC, they have had a lot of staffing cuts and budget cuts statewide, and they're a little bit thinner than they used to be. But hopefully they'll be able to manage this process in a timely
We're all
manner.
struggling, Dave.
Pardon me?
We're all struggling.
Yeah, I know.
It's their
Understood.
job.
Last thing I want to mention is that we talked a little bit earlier about setting up a facilities tour and going on a little field trip so everyone can see some of the more impressive parts of our system. And when Suzanne is back, I'm going to ask her to organize that with the board. But I was thinking maybe the week of June 10th. It's before school's officially over and people start going away on vacations and things like that. We don't have an exact date set yet, but that's the date I thought we could target if it seems to work for everybody. So we can, get some vehicles or a bus or two vans and go see the treatment plants, see the tanks, some of the pump stations, and bring you all a little more into familiarity with some of this stuff. So when Dick or anyone else is talking about these things, you've been there, you've seen it, and I think you'll enjoy that. It's informative and pretty impressive. So, as I said, when Suzanne gets back, we'll circulate a date, we'll pick something in the middle of that week, and try to get that set up as fast as we can. Last thing I want to mention is we did move ahead with the promotional package with Central New York Open House, New York Sash TV show. If you haven't seen it, I didn't see it that weekend, but I did see the YouTube posting of the video, and I thought it came out pretty well. We have a chance to get our story out. We'll be doing a couple of more segments, so we're tracing the water from the source all the way down to the user, and each segment will cover a different piece. So we're going to get Jill Hayes out there with a hard hat and a vest and put her down in a hole with a wrench and show her what goes into fixing the water main. And the viewers at home will get to see that too. So I think it's a good opportunity to be able to tell stories in 3 or 4 minutes. It's harder to say when in 20 seconds when you're covering a news story. So it's a pretty good opportunity. I think the last segment, Ellis, you saw it and thought it went pretty well too.
It was great.
It's great.
Yeah. So unless
It
there's
was
any
on
other-
again Sunday, actually.
Yes.
Oh, was it? Did they show you?
Sunday morning.
Great, yeah. There's a 30-second TV spot, too, that's going to start airing along with that. We had the footage left over from something else we did. We just needed to change the script, because it was shot before to announce the settlement, the interim settlement last summer. So the script was about the settlement, but we just did the voiceover, and we'll be using the same footage. It should work pretty well, and it's very cost-effective. So you'll see the 30-second TV commercial go with it. If there's any other questions, I'll be happy to take them. If not, I'll turn it back to the chairman.
Anything for Pat? Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Any old business? Yes?
A while back, we had a meeting in the committee, operations committee, of the fact of getting deposits on water service. And Bruce brought up at our last meeting, there was someone, I don't know who it was, in arrears pretty good on a number of houses. And during our meeting, there's kind of a conflict between us of who gives deposits and who doesn't. So I did a little more research on it, and I got the proper information. I'd like to ask Mr. Ford, at his convenience, if we could have another meeting and go over that again. And maybe we could find out what's going on with these, that particular person Mr. Brodsky was talking about with the high delinquent bills, if we've shut them off, if we collected anything on them.
And actually, thank you for reminding me, because part of my report, I was going to mention that Bruce did ask a legal question, last time around, and Ted has researched it. I don't know if you want to discuss it here, Ted, or?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Well, I'm
Or any
prepared
other
to do
thing.
that, but
Well,
it's an enforcement issue.
I can convey it if you're comfortable with that. Again, it's a question that we looked at in the past, and the question was, if we have a customer that owns several locations and they're delinquent at one location, can we shut them all off?
And can I interrupt?
Sure.
Yeah, I really don't think this is appropriate for
Okay.
public discussion. I think it's attorney-client,
Okay,
and I think it should be discussed in executive session,
fair enough.
okay?
Yep, thanks.
The answer is clear,
Mhm.
but I just would
Sure.
rather not discuss it
Understood.
on television.
Very good.
All right, so, let's see, where are we?
All
So
business.
Mitch will just
I'll call
make the
for it.
arrangements for that. Anything else, Tony?
No, not under old business, no.
Any other old business? Any new business? Yes, Tony?
I was under the impression a couple weeks ago that there was a conference down in Florida that some people went to, and I spoke with Pat about it afterwards. The information I got was that it was for service department. I come to find out it wasn't. So Jim Mack went from IT and Steve Gessler from meters and back. And in our handbooks that we were issued, it says 5 days after they return, they're supposed to give a written report of what they learned, basically, what the seminar was about. And to clear up any other misinformation in the future, I would like to see the board be advised of any seminars, who's going, whatnot, ahead of time, so and maybe we can expect to see these written reports, and maybe we can all learn something from them.
Well, I would suggest that goes to Mitch's committee, and the committee should take a look at it. I'm not sure that this rises to a board level type of concern every single time somebody's going out to a seminar. I think there ought to be some discussion with that, within that committee, to see if it
I'll take that.
rises to this level.
We can do that in the operation.
If somebody's doing something wrong within the handbook, that's a managerial problem, and if our management team is failing on something,
Wouldn't that fall under personnel committee?
personnel operations.
Operation, I'll take it out. That's fine.
Well, Pat would still approve any travel, so it's, and it's fine.
Which would be his function. I'm just not sure that's something that rises to our
Well,
level.
it sounds like an operational issue,
Sure.
not a board issue, but, I mean, it's,
So we can do
Call an
everything in one
operations
meeting.
meeting next week. Call an operations. I got what you said.
Anything else, Donnie?
No, that's it, thank you.
Anybody else? Is there a need to discuss this issue in executive session this evening, Pat? Is this something we have to? No, there is not. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.